Something happened in your yard this morning. Not something dramatic, not something you could point to and say, there, that's what happened. Something quieter than that. Something that lasted only a few seconds. A bird went silent, then another, and within moments, a yard that had been full of sound was completely still. No songs, no chatter, no movement, just silence. You probably looked outside, maybe glanced toward the feeder, maybe scanned the fence line. And when you saw nothing unusual, you went back to whatever you were doing. But something was there, and every bird in your yard knew exactly what it was. The strange part? They tried to tell you. Because here is what most people never realize about the birds outside their window. They are not simply living their lives. They are watching. Constantly watching the sky, watching the trees, watching the ground, tracking every movement, every shadow, every unfamiliar presence that enters their world. And when something changes, when something dangerous appears, when something enters the yard that should not be there, they send a warning every single time. The problem is not that the warning isn't being sent. The problem is that most of us never learned how to hear it. For years, your birds have been telling you exactly what is happening around you, and you've been walking right past the message. Today, that changes, because once you learn what these warnings sound like, you will never hear your backyard the same way again. There is a rule in the bird world that is older than cities, older than farms, older than human history itself. The first bird to go silent is usually the first bird to know. Most people think a warning begins with a loud alarm call, a scream, a sharp cry, a sudden burst of noise. But very often, the first warning is silence. Because in the language of birds, silence is not the absence of communication. It is communication. And sometimes it is the most urgent message of all. Imagine a small songbird perched high in a tree. The morning is normal. The flock is feeding. Birds are calling to one another. Everything feels safe. Then the bird sees something. A hawk gliding above the canopy, a cat moving beneath the hedge, a predator slipping through the shadows, and instead of calling out, it stops, mid-song, mid-chirp, mid-note, complete silence. That silence creates a gap in the soundscape, a sudden absence where sound should be, and every bird nearby notices it instantly, before they understand why, before they identify the threat, before they consciously process what happened. They feel that something is wrong. Within seconds, the entire yard begins to change. Some birds drop lower into cover. Some freeze completely. Others vanish into the dense inner branches where predators struggle to reach them. No meeting, no discussion, no visible signal. Just information moving through the flock at incredible speed, all because one bird stopped singing. And chances are, you have witnessed this yourself. Think about the last time your yard suddenly went quiet. No obvious reason, no visible predator, no dramatic event, just a strange stillness that seemed to fall out of nowhere. Then, a minute later, every bird was gone. Most people shrug and move on. Birds don't, because the bird that went silent first probably saw something you never noticed. Maybe it was hidden in the branches. Maybe it was moving through tall grass. Maybe it was high above your line of sight, but somewhere in the yard, a threat appeared, and the first bird that saw it sent a warning, not with sound, with silence. The warning spread, the flock responded, the system worked perfectly, and the entire message passed through the yard without a single human noticing what had happened. Because while you were standing in the middle of that warning network, you did not yet speak the language. When the silence finally breaks, the next warning begins. And this one is even more remarkable, because when birds call after an alarm, they are not simply shouting danger. They are often describing exactly what kind of danger has appeared. One of the clearest examples comes from a small bird that many people barely notice, the chickadee. Most of us know the sound, chick-a-dee-dee-dee. It feels cheerful, ordinary, the kind of sound that fades into the background of a quiet morning. But hidden inside that call is information. Real information. Researchers studying chickadees made a fascinating discovery. The number of D notes at the end of the call changes depending on the threat. In other words, the bird isn't just announcing danger, it's describing it. A larger predator, something dangerous but less agile, may trigger only a few D notes. A short message, a lower level of urgency. The flock becomes alert but not panicked. Because a large predator often has limitations. It may be powerful, but it cannot move easily through dense branches. The birds still have options, but when the predator is small, fast, and highly maneuverable, everything changes. The call becomes longer, more rapid, more urgent. D. The message becomes clear. This threat is serious. Take cover immediately. Do not hesitate. And here's the truly incredible part. The warning isn't only understood by other chickadees. Nuthatches understand it. Titmice understand it. Wrens understand it. Finches understand it. Even birds from completely different species respond. Imagine hearing a language that isn't your own and still understanding every important word. That's what happens in your yard every day. A chickadee identifies a threat. It broadcasts the information, and an entire community reacts within seconds, without confusion, without discussion, without mistakes. Most people look into their backyard and see individual birds, separate creatures living separate lives, but that isn't what is happening. What you're really looking at is a network, a constantly communicating system, a neighborhood connected by shared warnings, shared information, and shared survival. Every morning, that network comes alive, and every morning it is speaking a language most humans never notice. Now, we come to perhaps the strangest warning of all, because this is a warning that may be happening in your yard right now without you hearing a thing. Not because you're distracted, not because your hearing is bad, because the signal was never designed for you. Imagine a hawk soaring overhead, high above the trees, searching, watching, looking for movement below. The birds see it instantly, and suddenly a warning spreads through the yard. But instead of a loud alarm call, the signal is almost invisible. A thin whistle, extremely high-pitched, extremely brief, so brief that many people never notice it at all. Scientists often refer to this as a seat call, and it is one of nature's most elegant survival tools because the call solves a problem. A normal alarm call can reveal the location of the bird making it. That creates danger. A predator can simply follow the sound, but the seat call is different. Its frequency makes it extremely difficult to locate. The hawk may hear that something happened, but it cannot easily determine where the sound came from. The warning spreads. The messenger remains hidden. It's a brilliant system. Millions of years of evolution condensed into a fraction of a second, and once you know about it, you begin noticing its effects everywhere. You've probably seen birds freeze for no obvious reason. A feeder full of activity suddenly becomes motionless. Birds cling to their perches, bodies tense, heads tilted upward. Everything stops. 10 seconds, 15 seconds, 20 seconds. Then slowly, the activity resumes. Most people assume nothing happened, but something did happen. A warning was sent, a warning was received, and every bird nearby responded exactly as intended. A hawk may have crossed directly above your yard. An entire community may have reacted instantly, and you never knew it occurred, because while the birds were participating in a conversation about survival, you weren't part of that conversation, at least not yet. And once you realize these hidden warnings are happening all around you, a strange thing begins to happen. The backyard stops feeling silent. You start noticing patterns, signals, moments that once seemed random, and little by little, you begin hearing the language that was there all along. There is a bird in your yard that most people misunderstand, a bird so loud, so persistent, so impossible to ignore that many people consider it a nuisance. The blue jay. You know the sound, that sharp, harsh call that suddenly cuts through an otherwise peaceful morning. The kind of call that makes you look out the window and think, what is wrong with that bird? But the blue jay is not being dramatic. In fact, it may be one of the most useful birds in your entire yard, because when a blue jay starts screaming, it usually means something important has happened. The jay has seen a threat, not suspected one, not imagined one, seen one, a hawk, a cat, a snake, a predator moving through territory the birds consider home. Most songbirds respond to danger by becoming quieter. The blue jay often does the opposite. It becomes louder, much louder, because the blue jay understands something important. A predator's greatest advantage is surprise, and once surprise is gone, the hunt becomes much harder. So instead of hiding, the jay announces what it has seen. Repeatedly, relentlessly, publicly, the message is simple. I see you. Everyone else sees you too. Your cover is gone. Your hunt is over. And remarkably, that strategy often works. Predators rely on uncertainty. When an entire neighborhood knows exactly where they are, many simply move on. This is why a screaming blue jay can sometimes protect far more than itself. It protects the entire community. The finches at the feeder, the sparrows beneath the hedge, the chickadees moving through the trees. Every bird benefits from the warning. And here's the fascinating part. The next time you hear a blue jay screaming non-stop, don't close the window. Don't dismiss it as noise. Look around. Look carefully. Scan the tree line. Check the fence. Watch the sky. Because there is a good chance the jay has seen something before you have. The bird is not causing the problem. The bird is reporting it. The warning was never meant to annoy you. It was meant to protect everyone listening, including you. The final warning is different. It doesn't sound urgent. It doesn't sound dramatic. In fact, most people would never recognize it as a warning at all, because this warning is hidden inside something that sounds peaceful: comfort, familiarity, trust. Listen to a flock of chickadees moving through a quiet morning. You'll hear soft calls passing back and forth between them, gentle sounds, almost conversational, nothing alarming, nothing urgent, just birds keeping track of one another. I'm here, you're there. Everything is normal. Researchers have discovered that these contact calls are surprisingly personal. Individual birds have slightly different voices, different signatures, different identities. The flock recognizes them, bird by bird, voice by voice, much the same way you recognize a friend's voice over the phone. But something even more remarkable happens in yards where birds feel truly comfortable. Over time, they begin treating predictable humans as part of the landscape. The same person, the same routine, the same calm behavior, day after day, month after month. Eventually, the birds learn. This person is not a threat. This person belongs here. And when that happens, something changes. You walk outside and the birds keep talking. The contact calls continue. The flock doesn't scatter. The yard remains relaxed because your presence has become normal, expected, trusted. But now comes the warning. Because the warning is not when those calls continue. The warning is when they stop. Imagine stepping outside and instantly the quiet conversations disappear. The flock pulls back. The calls end. The atmosphere changes. Nothing dramatic happens. No alarm call, no blue jay screaming, no visible panic, just silence. That silence is information. The birds have noticed you, and they are reassessing, watching, evaluating, waiting. In other words, the absence of comfort is itself a warning, a signal that trust has not yet been earned, or perhaps that trust has begun to fade. Most people never realize this is happening. They assume birds are naturally nervous, naturally distant, naturally cautious, but often the birds are telling you something much more specific. We don't know you yet. We aren't sure about you. We're still watching. And sometimes that's the most important warning of all, because unlike hawks or predators, this warning is about a relationship between you and the living world just outside your door. Up until now, every warning we've covered has had a signal, a call, a silence, a sound that tells the birds something has changed. But there is one warning your yard sends that almost nobody notices, because it doesn't arrive all at once. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't demand your attention. It simply begins and keeps going, quietly, slowly, almost invisibly, until one day you realize something is missing. And by then, the warning has been happening for months. Imagine a chickadee that visits your feeder every morning. Not every once in a while, every morning. You see it so often that eventually you stop noticing it. It becomes part of the routine, part of the landscape, part of what makes your yard feel alive. Then, one day, it lands a little farther away. Not much, just one branch over. You don't think anything of it. A few days later, it's 2 branches away, then 3, then some mornings. It doesn't visit at all. Nothing dramatic happened, no sudden event. No obvious reason, just a tiny shift, so small that you barely notice. But the bird noticed. The bird always notices. The same thing happens with cardinals, finches, wrens, sparrows. The feeder that used to be crowded by mid-morning stays full a little longer. The bird bath that once attracted visitors all day seems quieter than it used to. The songs that filled the air at sunrise become slightly less frequent, then slightly less frequent again and again. Not enough to alarm you, not enough to stand out, just enough to slowly change the character of the yard. Maybe the feeder sat empty for a week. Maybe the water became stagnant. Maybe construction started nearby. Maybe a predator began visiting regularly. Maybe the routine that birds had learned to trust became unpredictable. Whatever the reason, the birds noticed, because birds are always paying attention. Every visit, every sound, every change, every interruption, every broken pattern, they notice all of it and they respond. Not dramatically, not emotionally, not angrily. They simply adjust. A little at first, then a little more, then a little more after that. The way trust changes, the way confidence fades, the way a relationship slowly drifts apart. One visit at a time, one branch at a time, one morning at a time. And that is what makes this warning so powerful. Because unlike every other warning we've discussed, this one doesn't happen in a moment. It happens gradually, so gradually that most people never see it happening until one day they walk outside and something feels different. The feeder is full, the water is clean, the trees are still there, the yard looks exactly the same, but somehow it feels empty, quieter, stiller, less alive. And that's when people begin asking questions. Where did all the birds go? What happened? When did this start? But the truth is, it didn't happen that morning. It started weeks ago, maybe months ago. The warning was already there. You just didn't recognize it, because birds rarely leave all at once. They leave the same way trust leaves, slowly, quietly, without announcement, until one day the absence becomes impossible to ignore. Every morning, your backyard is speaking, through the silence that falls before danger appears, through alarm calls that describe threats in astonishing detail, through warnings hidden in frequencies most humans cannot hear, through blue jays announcing predators before anyone else notices them, through the quiet comfort calls that reveal whether you are trusted or still being watched, and through the gradual disappearance that tells you something important has changed. All around you, an invisible network is operating. Every day, every season, every sunrise, birds sharing information, tracking danger, monitoring change, protecting one another. A language that has existed for millions of years, long before fences, long before houses, long before us. And the remarkable thing is, it was never hidden. It was never secret. It was happening in plain sight the entire time. Right outside your window, right above your head, right now. You just didn't know what you were hearing until today. So tell me in the comments, has your yard ever gone completely silent for no reason you could explain? And when you looked around, what did you find? I read every single comment, and I would love to hear your story. Until next time, keep listening. Your birds may be telling you more than you think.